a popcorn or a bobble stitch. And what it does is it lifts up a bunch of stitches to make a little bobble in your knitting. So I'm going to show you how to do the bobble stitch. So in order to make the bobble or the popcorn stitch, I need to knit 4 stitches into one single stitch. And I'm going to do that by knitting into the front and the back of the single stitch twice. So let's see what that looks like. I'm going to knit here, and then we're going to come around the back and knit again, and then come back to the front and knit, and one more time around the back. Gets a little tight, and knit. Now, what we want to do next is we need to reduce these 4 stitches down to one single stitch. So we'll take this second stitch, and it goes over the top of the first stitch, and the third stitch. These are a little tight in here. Comes over the top of that first stitch, and that fourth stitch comes right over the top of that final stitch. And then we need to bring this around to the front so that we have that little bobble that we made. So let's do this one more time. So we're going to knit 5 stitches. My pattern calls to knit for 5 stitches. So we'll knit 5 stitches, and I'm going to pull this a little bit tight so that bobble stays on the front. Hoping you can see that. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stitches. Now it's time for another bobble stitch. So it's knitting into the front of this loop and then knitting into the back of the loop 4 times. So we're going to knit into the front, come around, and knit into the back. Whoops. Let's get that back on the stitch. We're going to come around and knit on the back, and then bring it back and knit again onto the front, and then again onto the back. That gives you these 4 stitches that are attached to one stitch. And now we're going to take these, the second stitch, slip it over that first stitch, the third stitch, oh, don't split it, and the fourth stitch, all over that first stitch. And then bring that to the front of our knitting, and then knit 5 again. And I'm just going to kind of tighten that a little bit so that it tucks that popcorn stitch out to the front, so you can see him right there. 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's do it one more time. I'm going to knit 1 into the front loop, a second into the back loop, another into the front loop, and another into that back loop. Giving us those 4 stitches. So now we're just going to go in here and pick up the second stitch, Put him over the first, the third stitch, pick him up and go over the first, and the fourth stitch. And if you really need to use your fingers and get in there with your fingernails, trust me, that is not unusual. So this is what our bobble looks like, and here is what it looks like in pattern in the actual sock. This is called the Nina sock, and I will leave a link to the pattern below. It's available on Ravelry. I hope you enjoy doing the bobble stitch, otherwise known as the popcorn stitch.